Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. I'm doing great. Today we are in the Los Angeles area, and I wanted to do a little throwback to a Hollywood story that I lived through and tie it into what we're vlogging today. So, when I decided to try and make it as an actor, for those of you who don't know, I had a band, and I got to a point where I had made an album and I just felt like I don't really have anything else left I want to say. And I had met the actress Shelley Winters at that time. She always said, you have something, you should be an actor, you should be an actor. So after she passed away, and I didn't really know what else to do with myself, I went to Central Casting and signed up, gave them all my measurements and all that stuff. And so one day all of a sudden they call me and they say, hey, are you still 6'3", 210 pounds? And at the time I was. So I said, yeah. And they said, okay, we want to book you to be a stand-in tomorrow. And I said, okay, sure. So I show up, and what I find out is that it's a TV show called Comedy Bang Bang, and what they're trying to do is the two main characters are going to run into themselves in the future, so they just needed me to be the back of one of the guys so that he's talking to himself at one point. And when I show up to set, first thing in the morning when you show up to set, you always, if you have a morning call, they always say, go get breakfast first and then come back and get fitted for your clothes or whatever. So they send me to breakfast, and then breakfast is a very small cast today. I think it was 5 people that were going to be in holding and everything. And I go out to get breakfast, and it's a food truck. And there are 2 people in front of me at the food truck, one being one of the crew members who had a headset on and everything, and then the person directly in front of me was this long-haired man that I couldn't help but notice right away. It was the great Weird Al Yankovic. And so he orders his vegan breakfast or vegetarian breakfast, whichever it was, and he goes, oh, sorry, and steps aside. I said, no, you're fine. And I order my food, and I said, am I allowed to talk to you? And he goes, sure. I said, I am a longtime fan of yours. I said, when I was a kid and UHF came out, I said, I was already a fan of your music, but my dad and I couldn't find a theater near us that showed it. And we went to the video store one day, and I thought that we were renting UHF, and it turned out to be this thing that you made where you're asking Michael Jackson's approval to do a song, and he's doing the thumbs up, and all of a sudden Al goes, whoa, you saw that back then? The complete Al? Nobody saw that. Wow, that's amazing. And I go, yeah, I loved it. I go, yeah, I've been a huge fan. I said, can I take a photo with you? He goes, absolutely. And so we take a photo together, which I'll show you here. And then I said, who's your favorite person to meet? And he goes, Michael Jackson was pretty cool. I mean, he goes, it didn't happen exactly like in the complete Al, but he said, I mean, we sent him the song, and he got back to us and said that he would let me do it. And then later on I did get to meet him. So he said, that was pretty cool. But I said, is there anybody that ever told you no, or just, he goes, well, not many, honestly, because he said, usually whenever I parody somebody's song, their song gets kind of a boost, and so people like me to do it. He goes, but I mean, Prince would never allow me to do it. And then he said, and then of course the Coolio thing, which I didn't know what he meant by that. I read later that he had asked for Coolio's permission to use Gangsta's Paradise, and apparently he thought he got the permission, and then once the Amish Paradise video came out and everything came out, Coolio said, I never gave my approval. So he did tell me, though, he said, I think it was the Plain White Tees, he said, I made a parody for Hey There Delilah, and he said, and they loved it, but when they played it for their record label, they said, oh, we think it'll kill the sales. It'll make your song look like it's, it doesn't mean anything. And he said, which is pretty rare, because people usually, like I said, want me to, do one of their songs. And he said, so they wanted me to, the label didn't want him to. He goes, so eventually, I think he said that the band actually put that song out on their website eventually for free. So he was a super cool guy. And one thing that's crazy is I always notice every time you meet somebody who has kids that are around 10, 11 years old, Weird Al Yankovic is always their favorite. For the last 20 years, every time I run into somebody with kids, that seems to be the case. And I thought, wow, what an amazing thing for an accordion player to, every time he releases an album, every 3, 4, 5 years, he gains a whole new audience, a whole new generation becomes his fans. That is rare. So let's talk about how Weird Al Yankovic became the great Weird Al. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now.
Shadow
So our story really starts here. We are directly across from Linwood High School, and Al was the valedictorian of his high school graduating class, but this was his childhood home. He might be up there with like Dolly Parton as one of the greatest celebrities to love. He gives you every reason to love him, and you never hear anything bad. Like I told you my story when I wanted to talk to him, he had nothing but time for me, and everybody I've ever met that met him, he was the same way. So his story really is here. This was his childhood home, and when he was 5 years old, it was actually right before his 6th birthday, a traveling salesman came up to their door they were actually from the local music school, and tried to sell Al's parents either a guitar or an accordion and lessons to get Al into it. That was how they did it. So his parents had the option, accordion, guitar. What do they choose? Accordion, of course. So Al started lessons a day before his 6th birthday. He ended up learning how to read music. He could play classical, he could play polka, everything that you do on the accordion, but he loved popular music and rock music and things like that. So he said, being an accordion player, there weren't any bands. None of his friends were looking for an accordion player for their band. So he said, I realized though I could always make people laugh by playing popular songs that were on the radio on my accordion. So that's kind of what he did. He would write these like goofy little songs on his accordion and rock out on them. So he ends up graduating, like I said, from Linwood High School over here, valedictorian. He said he was not popular. He was very nerdy, and said that when he went off to college, he went to California Poly, which was up in San Luis Obispo. He had become a fan of Dr. Demento's radio show during his upbringing when he was about 12, 13 years old, and it was a radio program that played weird and comical songs and things like that. So when he went to college, while he was in the dorm, he got a job at the radio station for the college. And so that's where the Weird Al name came from. He said while he was in the dorm, the people in the dorm started calling him Weird Al, and he needed a wacky name to be on the air. So he said everybody had a crazy like morning show name. So he said, I just went with Weird Al. So that's how he got the name. Now he was recording his own songs on the accordion, but Dr. Demento actually came to the college while Al was there, and Al slid him a tape of his songs, and Dr. Demento ended up playing one of the songs, even though Dr. Demento said it wasn't that good, but I played it anyway. And Al was so motivated that he recorded more songs and sent him one called Student Cafeteria. And Dr. Demento played that, and it started getting requested. So Al started, while he was in college, started playing accordion shows in his dorm, and people liked it. So then he started playing coffee shops, and that's how he actually started doing everything as a performer. And then while he was a DJ, My Sharona became a hit, and he decided to parody it on accordion and do My Bologna. And he ended up getting a record deal because the lead singer of the Knack heard it, went to his label and said, I think this would help our record sales if you guys put this out. And so that's how Al really got his start. It wasn't planned. He said he actually was going to college to be an architect. It wasn't like a passion. He was just, thinking of an adult job. So he kind of just ended up falling into a music career. Once he got a little taste of success from there, he was still going to college. And so he recorded, he didn't have any money or anything. He recorded in the public bathroom across from the radio station at the college. And now they have a plaque there saying that Weird Al recorded there. But he recorded a parody of Another One Bites the Dust called Another One Rides the Bus. And so that came out, that was doing well. Then he parodied I Love Rock and Roll with I Love Rocky Road, and did this great song about ice cream.
I hear those ice cream bells and I start to drool. Keep a couple quarts in my locker at school.
He had started carving out a niche for himself where he was taking popular songs that were already proven successes, changing the lyrics into something comical, and was finding his own fan base. Now he went out and performed opening for Missing Persons, and it didn't go well, but he ended up recording from the success of I Love Rocky Road, he did a great parody video, and MTV was new, and you know, that was a great way to promote your songs. So Al basically was making great videos, and then approached Michael Jackson and said, I want to parody Beat It with something called Eat It.
Kids are starving in Japan, so eat it.
And Michael approved it, and Al had a hit with that because he copied every single shot from the original music video. And he said that was kind of his thing, was he said, I wanted it to be as close to the original as possible.
Eat it, get yourself an egg and beat it.
He said, I mean, in fact, when we went and did Smells Like Nirvana, and we were covering Nirvana, said I went as far as to film the music video at the actual soundstage they filmed their video, hired the same custodial janitor guy, hired the same exact cheerleaders, even found the extras list and tried to hire all the same extras. He said that's how far he would with Eat It. Then he parodied Madonna's Like a Surgeon. I mean, Like a Virgin, but he did Like a Surgeon. He didn't have great record sales at those times, but he had hit songs. And so, like I said, he was, every time he'd put something out, it seemed like he always made new fans. Like the young kids were all becoming his fans. So, and he never lost fans, which is weird. So he had all these hits. He started doing multiple genres. You know, he'd do gangster rap with Amish Paradise, and he was doing white and nerdy, and he just started parodying everybody that was popular and started having hits. He said, I wake up and every day is a great day in my life. And he said, I'm always, you know, nowadays, he said, it's a little harder to do what he does because, you know, he actually, what's crazy is, if you remember way back when I told you he recorded that song in the bathroom, he needed someone to play percussion, so he had a friend of his play on the accordion box, like a drum beat. Well, he's kept basically the same musicians from the very beginning. They're still his band. They still go out and tour and everything. And this year, when I wanted to go see him, Katie and I tried 3 different cities across the U.S. and we could not get tickets. We were going to visit my family and he was sold out there. We were going to visit her family, he was sold out there. We were going to try and go in our town and he was sold out there as well. So he has said that, you know, with the way music has changed and everything, he said there's so many different ways people get into music that you don't have the big stars the way you did. Like you knew when he was making music, he said, you know, it was like you knew Michael Jackson was huge, you knew Bruce Springsteen, but now there's so many subgenres and YouTubes and all that stuff. He said, so I've accepted that I will never be first to parody anything anymore. Because of YouTube, somebody will hear a song and do it that night and they'll always beat me to the punch. So I just have to try and be better. But he said, not only that, he said, but now there's like less big name stars. And he said he's kind of hesitant to ever say who he'd like to do songs of, because he said he one time said, you know, they asked him, hey, would you ever do Lady Gaga? And he goes, well, sure, she's a huge star. I would totally be open to that. You know, I have to be because she has so many hits. And he said the next day in the papers, it's like, Weird Al wants to cover Lady Gaga. What song will he do? And he's like, and I was like, well, I didn't really say that, but okay. Now, on top of just being an amazing musician, entertainer, performer, and just awesome good guy, he also did one of my favorite movies that has turned into a cult classic, which is UHF. He had a kids show, he's written books, he has just done so many things. He ended up becoming a cast member on Comedy Bang Bang. I mean, he's done so many things and he's always a good guy. You just never hear bad stories. He even co-owns a restaurant in Los Angeles. I told you I think he's vegetarian or vegan. I think it's a vegan restaurant actually. So I was really inspired to want to come here, not only because I'm just, you know, I think he's just such an awesome person and so important to pop culture and everything, but I remember seeing a video about a year ago, right after I left Los Angeles the last time, and it showed him out here showing up and visiting the house, and he said that he hadn't seen inside the house or anything since the 70s, and he posted a photo of himself as a little baby sitting next to like a vent, and then as a, you know, modern day, him standing next to that same vent. But there is something that's sad, you know. He said he learned from his dad that the best way to be happy is to do what you love, but his parents ended up passing away in a really sad way. It wasn't at this house, it was actually at a different house But while I was out on tour one year in, I believe it was 2004, his parents started a fire in their fireplace and forgot to open the vent, and they ended up dying together of carbon monoxide poisoning. I just can't even imagine how hard that was to deal with. He was, I know, very close to his parents, and like I said, if they wouldn't have chosen the accordion, he probably wouldn't have the career he has today, because it was the oddity of making music that people liked on an accordion that made him, so popular. He's still making music, and I think he's celebrating or pretty close to 50 years making music. Wonder if he ever ate any lemons out of that tree. I don't know. Well, from Weird Al's house, everyone go listen to some Weird Al music. You'll remember how awesome he is. And it's so cool to see how beautiful his childhood home still looks, and that they were nice enough to let him go in. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.